So what's up guys, it's Dan here, and behind me you can see my brand new video editing setup. So I've been putting this together for the last few months now, and I decided that it's probably time to make a video about it. So this is my setup tour as of April 2017, and I hope you enjoy it. Firstly, let's take a look at the PC I'm using. So when I built this PC, I had three main criteria in mind. 1. I wanted this computer to be a Hackintosh. 2. I needed it to be capable of editing video in Adobe Premiere Pro and After Effects. And 3. I needed it to be fairly affordable, so for me this was ideally around the £400 mark. So for those of you who don't know, a Hackintosh is essentially a regular PC which runs Apple's macOS. In order for this to work properly, you really need to have an Intel based computer, as that's what macOS is designed to run on. So this is the parts list which I settled on. For the CPU, I'm using an Intel Core i3-6100, which is a dual core hyper-threaded processor clocked at 3.7 GHz. Now the reason I went for the cheapest Intel 6100 rather than a similarly priced but older generation i5 processor is because should I ever want to, I can easily upgrade the CPU to another more powerful Skylake chip in the future whilst using the same motherboard. For the RAM, I went with 8GB of DDR4 memory at 2133 MHz, and again I bought this in a single 8GB stick, so that if I ever plan to upgrade to 16GB in the future, all I have to do is just buy another one of the same memory modules, stick it in my computer, and I'll be good to go. For the graphics card, I picked up the MSI GeForce GTX 750 Ti with 2GB of memory, and this is the twin FROZR overclocked edition. So there are a few things which I really like about this card. Firstly is how quiet the card actually is. Thanks to those big fans on the card, it runs cool and quiet, and is one of the quietest graphics cards I've ever owned. Secondly, it's brilliantly compatible with macOS. It's really easy to get working, just stick the card in, download the NVIDIA web drivers, and everything works straight away. HDMI audio works on this card fine in macOS, and so does the CUDA engine for rendering videos nice and quickly in Adobe Premiere Pro. Thirdly, I've been thoroughly impressed by the performance of this card for its price. It can render videos relatively quickly, and whilst gaming in Windows, it can also play most recent games on high to ultra settings. Granted, it's not going to outperform any GTX 1080, but for £100 you really cannot go wrong with this card, as in my opinion it is absolutely brilliant value for money. For storage, I've got two drives. First is a 240GB SSD from PNY, which is what I have macOS installed on. Secondly, I also have a 500GB 2.5-inch hard drive from Seagate, which is what I have Windows installed on. Now the reason I did this is because I don't really need something too fast for Windows, because I literally only use it for games, and I really needed more storage on Windows because games are so massive these days, and I've actually nearly filled up my 500GB hard drive already just on games. For the motherboard, I went with a micro ATX board from GIGABYTE. This is the GA-H110M S2H. The Ethernet works fine with macOS, so does the audio, and the BIOS was fairly easy to set up as well. There weren't too many settings to change in order to get it working with macOS, so it seems to be like a pretty compatible board. Finally, everything is housed in the BitFenix Prodigy M micro ATX case, which I got in the Arctic White colour scheme. So the thing I really like about this case is actually how compact it is. Although it can be a little bit tricky to build in sometimes, especially fitting the power supply, it's certainly rewarding seeing how much you've been able to fit into such a compact space. The other thing I really like about this case is its design. Thanks to the colour scheme which I got it in, it seems to match my room perfectly. It matches all of my IKEA desk and cupboards and furniture in there. So it really integrates nicely into my bedroom. So now let's move on to the desktop. For my monitor, I'm using the ASUS VZ249H, which actually has some of the thinnest bezels I've ever seen on any monitor, and it looks incredible. Although this monitor is only 1080p, it's a nice 24-inch IPS panel which I find fits my needs perfectly for video editing and gaming. The built-in speakers are also a nice addition, especially on a monitor which is so thin. I guess the only slight issue I had with the monitor, however, is that the bezels are so thin I had to carefully position my Logitech C920 webcam on top so as not to cover part of the screen. Beneath my monitor I also have a few other things. To the left I have a 1TB external hard drive, which is what I use to back up all of my videos, photos, and also as a time machine backup drive on macOS. To the right I have a USB 3.0 hub from K-Tech, which also includes an SD card and a micro SD card reader, which is extremely handy for when I need to copy footage from my camera. It's also nice to have USB ports on the desktop so that I can easily plug in something like my phone to charge or a memory stick without having to reach down to get to my PC. Next to that you'll find my GameSir G4s, which is a wireless gamepad which I use with Windows. I've already done a review of this controller on my channel, so if you want to find out more you can go and check out that video. But one of my favourite features of this controller is the LED backlighting, as it looks absolutely awesome when you're gaming at night. And of course I also have an artificial plant from IKEA, because what YouTube setup is complete without one? The keyboard I'm using is actually a custom made 10 keyless mechanical keyboard from WASD Keyboards. It has Cherry MX blue switches and even has my logo printed on one of the keys. If you'd like to learn more about this keyboard, I've also done a review on this which you can find on my channel, but essentially it is one of the nicest keyboards I've ever used and I really love typing on it. As for the mouse, well, it's actually just a standard wireless Microsoft mouse which I had lying around. While it's quite a nice mouse to use, due to its age the wireless range isn't the best by today's standards and can sometimes be a bit temperamental with the connection, so I'm looking to upgrade this in the future. So in terms of software, my Hackintosh is actually running the latest version of macOS Sierra, which at the moment is version 10.12.4. And so far all of the updates have been really straightforward to install. I can just download and install them straight from the App Store, just like you can on a real Mac. So the bootloader I'm using is Clover bootloader, and I have this configured so that when you boot up the PC it gives you 3 seconds to choose between using macOS or Windows, and if you don't do anything within those 3 seconds it will automatically just boot into macOS. So it's really handy to have this set up so that whenever I turn my PC on I can quickly and easily choose the operating system which I want to use. Overall, I've been incredibly surprised at the performance you can get nowadays from a PC which costs just a little over £400 to build. I really enjoy using it both for video editing, gaming and even for schoolwork now, as having a mechanical keyboard makes it a lot quicker to type up long documents. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I do have a couple of upgrades planned for this setup already. Firstly, I want to get a new mouse, so I'm thinking of maybe buying a Logitech MX Master, as that seems like quite a good option. And I also want to get an RGB LED strip to stick along the back edge of my desk just to illuminate the area a bit more, as I've seen this done on quite a few other setups and it looks really cool, so I think it would look good on this one as well. And that pretty much sums up my setup tour. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like, as it helps the channel out a lot. And if you're new and want to see more content like this, you can subscribe. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.